You really grow as you serve, and as you give out and as you serve others, you really receive more in return. And I think that's the most precious gift that we as Lions have, is that we can give that gift.
Any physical remnant of the birthplace of Lionism in Hawaii has been obliterated, unfortunately, by the march of times. And it was here that it all began. The 51 names on the charter document represented a who's who of the Honolulu business and social community. Since its official beginning on October 11, 1926, the true origins of the Lions Club of Honolulu have been steeped in mystery and misconceptions, until now. The roots of the club actually began about 15 years earlier, inspired by local philanthropist Alexander Hume Ford. Never wanting for money, Ford hailed from a wealthy South Carolina family that provided him with the best education and all the refinements of a privileged life. Embarking on his new career of promoting global peace, Ford's Pan-Pacific Union Club would meet every Tuesday in the old Coney Estate at 1141 Richard Street, which is now the Eva side of the state capitol grounds. It began as sort of a think tank for solving world problems, but it soon evolved into a political action group that tried to use the clout of their influential membership to effect social change. It wasn't long before Pop Ford and his Pan-Pacific followers began making news around the globe, openly challenging world leaders with some very radical ideas for the time.
I mean, you have to stop and consider. This man was contacting presidents like Harding and Wilson, dictators and chancellors and kings all over the world. He was getting their attention. Many times he would actually hand deliver these notices to them to come to Honolulu, understand the culture here, see how people get along, and maybe we can all work together to do this on a global scale. Literally, what Ford was proposing was the United Nations. And this was in like 1920, 1921. This was a very radical notion. Peace among all men, of all nations, of all colors, of all cultures, of all religions. Way ahead of his time. He even wanted to have an Olympics here in Honolulu. Wow.
Meanwhile, over 5,000 miles away in Illinois, another group had already begun making news of their own. Founded by Chicago businessman Melvin Jones, the International Association of Lions Clubs was formed in 1917 in hopes of becoming another worldwide force for service to humanity. However, Jones and his Lions members targeted their mission directly to the grassroots level. While Pop Ford's Pan-Pacific Union sought to promote world peace by bringing about change from the top down, the Lions sought to create a better world, one local community at a time. The simple, non-political, non-religious concept of Lionism spread quickly throughout the U.S. Hundreds of local clubs were formed by the mid-1920s. But beyond a handful of clubs in Canada, the international part of Lionism was going nowhere. That's when Lions leadership in Chicago began taking an even greater interest in the small, but very noisy, Pan-Pacific Union Club in faraway territorial Hawaii. With both organizations seemingly seeking the same goals, it was only a matter of time before talk of a merger began. Melvin Jones made the first move. He sent representatives from California's Long Beach Lions Club to Honolulu in the spring of 1926. Their mission? To check out the Pan-Pacific Union Club and report back on the viability of uniting the two organizations. Lions leadership was hoping they'd be able to capitalize on the international credibility the Pan-Pacific Union had already established. And with Honolulu leading the way, the Lions would then have a strong base of operations to grow throughout the Pacific Rim. The Pan-Pacific Union members welcomed the visitors with typical aloha, extending courtesies fit for heads of state. But Pop Ford knew exactly why the Lions had come calling, and while openly gracious, he had his own motives to pursue a merger.
I always think of Lions as a hands-on organization, and I like to do that. You know, I want to belong to an organization that just gives money away or doesn't really get involved with projects, and I felt that Lions offered me that opportunity.
Ford understood too that if he could absorb the Lions into the Pan-Pacific Union, whoa, he's got an instantly built network now that he can take his ideas, his concepts for global peace, and really move a lot quicker than what he was doing just here in Honolulu alone.
The Pan-Pacific's Director of Education, Colbert Kurokawa, pored over the paperwork while Ford entertained the mainland guests and began negotiations. But upon reading the fine print of the Lions Constitution, Kurokawa found a line under membership qualifications that would definitely be a deal breaker. Unbeknownst to the Honolulu group, it was the same obstacle that was preventing the Lions from expanding into Latin America and other parts of the world. The Constitution's rule for Lions membership was clear. Members shall be white.
Ford, Kurokawa, everybody here in the Pan-Pacific Union, they realized, no way, you either take all of us or you take none of us, because everything we stand for is about mixed race, mixed culture. It's about inclusion. It's not about segregation.
With that, Kurokawa packed his bags and left for a 2-month odyssey to convince the Lions membership on the mainland to amend their constitution. Kurokawa's 8-week journey took him to dozens of local Lions clubs, traveling by rail from San Diego in the south to as far north as Vancouver, British Columbia. He spread Hawaii's gospel of racial harmony to any Lions that would listen. As the July date for the Lions convention in San Francisco drew near, Kurokawa reported back to Honolulu that he was greatly encouraged by the reception he was receiving. But with over 10,000 delegates attending the convention from all areas of the U.S., including the racially divided southern states, their success of deleting the whites-only clause was far from certain. Still reflecting the racial divisions of the time, Kurokawa was asked to sit in the back of the hall amongst the waiters and the busboys throughout the entire convention. He was allowed to remain in earshot of the arguments, but never able to set foot on the main floor.
The arguments went like this. Okay, if we bring Hawaiian to Lionism, we're going to do it for the sake of bringing them in alone. We're not going to force this onto other clubs. If they don't want to be racially mixed, that's up to them. But the compromise was we'll drop the white from the bylaws. That will no longer be a requirement for being a Lion. But it's not like we're going to go out and force clubs to integrate. And it passed.
With an acceptable compromise in place, records indicate the convention vote to eliminate the whites-only clause from the Constitution was unanimous. 10,000 yes votes, 0 votes opposed.
I think there's been a little bit of revisionist history there, but you know what? It doesn't matter. What's important is it passed. What's important is we opened up Lionism to the entire rest of the world. Whether they liked it in the South or not, doesn't matter. They eventually caught up with us on civil rights, but we did it here 30 or 40 years before they even had a clue.
After the amendment finally passed, Colbert Kurokawa was officially declared an honorary delegate and permitted to address the thousands of Lions in the hall on the final day of the convention. Amid a sea of white faces, the Japanese-born Kurokawa kept his words short but powerful.
Congratulations to all Lions on the passage of the amendment. Your tolerance and foresight should be hailed, and may God bless the future of Lionism.
Honolulu's Pan-Pacific Lions Club was officially granted a charter. Within months, the leadership in Chicago used Hawaii's inclusion to open the doors in Asia and Latin America. However, due to the amendment compromise, it would still be many years before some clubs in the continental United States would recruit members of color. But regardless of unresolved racial issues on the U.S. mainland, new clubs began forming in Cuba, Mexico, China, Panama, and Puerto Rico. The quiet revolution in Honolulu had succeeded.